そして本日のゲストジャイルス・ピーターソンさんです。どうぞお入りください。拍手でお迎えください。
Did you actually make it in time to see some of the film?
No, I just caught the last half an hour.
Okay.
Which is weird.
I noticed there's an awful lot of credits. It's the first time I've seen it since it first came out, actually. There's an awful lot of credits, and I noticed my own name in there. I've no idea why. But anyway, it was nice to see it again. When you originally made this, was it a sort of promotional thing for the album, basically?
Yeah, so it wasn't meant to be a documentary that long. It was meant to be what they call EPK, electronic press kit, which was we were aiming for like 10 minutes. And so they obviously picked up a lot of content and turned it into that, yeah.
見ててね、これアルバム「ソンゼーラ」っていうアルバムのためのプロモーションとして作ったのかなと思ったら、最初はね10分ぐらいのつもりだったものですけど、いわゆる EPK で、それが結局70分の映画になっちゃったんですね。When you originally made the trip, was it 2014? Yeah. Was the main purpose of your trip to try and find that album?
Well, not really, but it was one of, the reason I made that record was because I was actually having a meeting with the head of Island Records about a completely different subject one day in 2013. And I wanted to talk about archiving a record label that he was now on top of called Talking Loud. And I was worried that with time the label was going to get lost a little bit in the world of Universal. So, but as soon as I started talking to him about the idea, I could see his eyes started phasing and almost losing focus on me. I could see he was not interested in talking about an old archive. But then he said to me, "Is there anything else you'd like to do?" And I had a few moments to think about a possible answer to any project that I'm interested in doing. Now, in 2014 it was the World Cup in Brazil, and I thought to myself, this guy likes football and he's excited that England might win at the World Cup, so maybe I can throw an idea to him about making an album in Brazil which he can then use for music and syncing on TV, which he can make money from. I had to think about how the business guy is going to think of my thought of making a record like that. And he was like, "That's a great idea." So he then immediately said, "Go to Brazil and make a record." But then I came back with the record a few months later, which was quite a sort of deep look at Brazilian music. And I could see his disappointment when he realised that I didn't give him the Black Eyed Peas version of I think he was thinking I was going to make a really pop record. So that's how I made this record.
So the whole thing came off the top of your head in a meeting?
Yeah,
pretty much.
In about 30 seconds of...
Wow. これ2014年に作ったものですけど、その1年前にユニバーサルの中の、アイランドグループの人とミーティングをしていて、ジャイルズが以前やってたトーキングラウドっていうレーベルの存在がね、ユニバーサルという大きな組織の中でちょっと薄れていくんじゃないかと思って、いかにそれを保護するかっていうミーティングをしているつもりだったけど、相手はもう全然明らかに興味がなくて、他に何かやりたいことはありませんかって言って、ちょうどワールドカップの時期だったし、その相手がサッカー好きだっていうのを知ってて、話してて何か彼の興味を引くようなことを言わなければならないから、30秒ぐらいの間に、この映画で描かれているアルバムの構想をデタラメに言ってみたらね、すぐにぜひやってくださいと予算もらってブラジル行ってこいって言われて作った。 So when you arrived in Rio, did you have any idea about the musicians you wanted to work with, or did this also get pretty much improvised?
Yeah, it was pretty improvised. I mean, I went over there pretty much straight away after that meeting, and I went over for a kind of just to sort of just check out the scene a little bit in Rio. And I went over there with a producer called Floating Points. Yep. And it's funny because we just sort of wanted to go record shopping and just kind of see the scene. And one day, actually, when Floating Points went record shopping, I didn't want to go. I wanted to go to a rehearsal by a group called Orchestra Imperial. And that's where I met Cassim, who ended up being the producer or the co-producer of the project, because he was the perfect new generation who could make the link between what I did and what these musicians were. In fact, Cassim had spent a lot of time in Japan because his partner was Japanese, and he used to come and hear me. He knew me from hearing me playing in Japan at Club Yellow, weirdly enough, and so he knew me and he understood my DJ side, and so he obviously could see the line that I was trying to create with the album. So he was the perfect connection that I made on that first trip. And then I went back, we made some preparations, and then I went back, I think after Christmas, beginning of the year, and then we had about 2 weeks to make the record.
最初にちょっと様子見にフローティングポイントというプロデューサーと2人で、行ったんですけど、ある時その相手のフローティングポイントがレコードを探しに行って、ジャイルズはコンサートに行ったんですね。でそこで紹介されたのがこのアルバムのコープロデューサーとなったカシンで、カシンはジャイルズのことを以前日本に来た時に、クラブイエローで DJ をしているところを見て、彼の存在をそこから知ってて、それで2人が相性があって、結局、一緒にアルバムをプロデュースすることになったんですね。Were you aware of most of the musicians you worked with before you started doing this, or were a lot of them people that you met through the recording?
I had my eye on quite a lot of different musicians, and a couple came through Cassin or through a connection here or there. Like Martinalia was one of those, but I was determined to work with Elza and Marcos Valle and Nana Vasconcelos, people that I knew already. And I was disappointed not to be able to work with Aieto and Flora Purin, but they're in Los Angeles, so they would have been important for me because they were very much part of my story. So I wanted to have enough of that, but yeah, I think most of the people were people that I already had my eye on, and luckily through Cassin we had Fast Track, and also we had a budget. I had the budget. I managed to get a budget from Universal, which was very rare in that, even now, major record labels are so much more about kind of, just delivering what they can see through stats, what's going to work, so the whole idea of concept records or cultural records like they used to make at Island, this sort of thing doesn't happen so easily these days. So that's why my meeting at Universal back then was really interesting, that I could find some kind of agenda for the major label to think that this was a profit-making exercise, right. More than culture.
Right. 一緒にやったミュージシャンたちを行く前から知ってたかということを聞いたんですけど、でカシンから紹介されて初めて知った人たちは若干いたけれども、大部分はもう自分の目をつけてて、例えばエルザだとかナナ・バスコンセロスだとか、マルコス・バーリとか、そういう人たちはもう自分で決めていて、本当だったらアイルトとかフローラ・プリームなんかも巻き込みたかったけれども、彼らはロサンゼルスに住んでいるので、それはちょっと無理でした。 でも運よく家臣の人脈もあったし、ユニバーサルから結構な予算を運よくもらっていて、今大手のレコード会社はなかなかね、こういう文化的な内容のレコードのために予算を割くってことはないので、その最初のミーティングでレコード会社の相手にこれはもしかしたら儲かるんじゃないかと思わせることができたのが運の尽きというか、そんな感じでした。Watching the film again after several years, the Elsa Soares performance of Brazil is just absolutely wonderful. Had she performed that song before? This was the first time.
I believe so. Yeah, she's certainly never recorded it on any of her albums. But it is interesting watching this again and seeing that Nana Vasconcelos is no longer with us and Elsa Soares passed away.
Right.
And at the time, I did think, if nothing else comes from this album, what we have got one of the ultimate versions of an anthem of Brazil by Elsa. So we knew that day that we had something worth the album. It was such an incredible moment. So, very grateful for that, and grateful that she was so present for that day, for that performance.
Right, and her story as well is just stunning. Yeah. エルザ・ソアレスのアクアレラ・ド・ブラジルの演奏はとにかく、素晴らしくて、この映画のっていうかこのアルバム以前に彼女は多分レコードでは少なくとも曲を歌ってなかったんじゃないかと思いますけど、彼女はもう亡くなったし、ナナ・バスコンセロスも亡くなってるんですけれど、もう録音した時点でもう一曲だけでも十分にアルバム全体の価値が得られているという確信はあったと。And at the end, when you come to Japan and finally get your copy of the Tam 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 record, it looks like it's shrink wrapped and absolutely brand new. Was it a repress or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what happened was that I did get an original copy.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, before that, but we made it more filmic, I think. But a label called Trunk Records in the UK, which is run by Johnny Trunk, which is a very good label for like library music and sort of film sound, strange British film soundtracks. A very sort of obscure label, great label. He knew that both I and Ed Motto had been talking about this record, and he found out that the record was now, because it was so old, it was public domain. So he managed to get the masters from, he managed to get Ed Motto's copy. He cleaned it up and then he pressed it, and he didn't even have to pay a record label. So he did very well for releasing. I think they sold over 10,000 copies of that record.
Wow. Okay. タムタムタムっていうずっと探してたレコードは日本のお坊さんが持ってたんですね。もう見ててもう新品っていうのを見てわかるんですけど、それを聞いたらイギリスのトランクレコードっていうレーベルがあって、ライブラリーのための音源だとか、あるいはちょっと渋い昔のイギリスの映画のサウンドトラックだとか、そういうものを出してるレーベルなんですけど、その人が調べたらすごく古いレコードでもうね著作権が切れているということが分かって、結局エッジモーターが持ってる版を貸してもらって、それをきれいにしてマスターに使って新たに出し直したんですね。で結局権利がもう切れているからレコード会社に対してお金を払う必要も全くなかったということでした。In Rio, you filmed some stuff in the favelas as well. Did you feel a sense of, not exactly anxiety, but did you feel it was a bit iffy being around there? Not at all?
Not really, no. I mean, I've been to Brazil many times. I've even DJ'd in the favelas before.
Oh, right.
So I've sort of done the job, did some podcasts in Brazil a few years previously to that, and DJ'd in Brazil several times. So it was fine. It was good. I mean, these favelas here were outside of Rio, so I didn't. The ones that they filmed there, they weren't the ones in Rio. They were like very much in the suburbs.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. And there was one where you actually didn't go because you said maybe next time.
Yeah. That was just a little throwaway, but it wasn't because it was meant to be anything else, but just a bit of drama for the documentary.
Okay. いくつかファベラっていうスラム街で撮影していたけれど、どのぐらい治安が悪いものなのかなと思ったら意外にそうでもなかったって言って、一箇所やっぱり行かない、もしかして次回っていう話があったけれど、あれは映画のためのちょっとした演出ということでした。Okay, thank you very much for coming in, Giles. I know you. When did you arrive in Tokyo?
I arrived yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you must be a bit jet lagged, I'm sure.
Yeah, I feel okay.
Are
So
you
I feel
alright?
good. I don't know why. I had a good night's sleep last night,
Oh,
and tomorrow I've got 2 shows.
right. Yokohama and Shibuya.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that should be good.
Okay. All right. 昨日着いたばかりだけどよく寝たっていうんでそんなに時差ボケがないみたいで明日2つのイベントがあって明日の夜7時が横浜の What's it, the Green what festival? Local Green?
Local green.
Local Green, I think. そして夜中の11時から渋谷のオーイーストでもっと大きなイベントがあります。Okay, thank you very much for coming. When we planned to have this film at the festival, this is the 3rd year of the festival, and I was thinking what films would be nice to have, and it just suddenly came into my mind. I had no idea you were going to be coming in. And then we had the showing for today scheduled, and just found out, I think a couple of weeks ago or something, that you had a gig on tomorrow, so great timing.
Well, thank you so much for thinking about it. I haven't seen it in 10 years, and
Really?
it's
Yeah.
not on YouTube, I don't think.
I don't think it is, no.
So it was really strange seeing myself from 10 years ago, but it was lovely. What a wonderful experience, and I really appreciate you sharing it with everybody again 10 years later.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you, Peter.
And I'm sure you know that the Japanese local release here had a couple of extra tracks on, including the Plum Blossom, which plays in the background when you're doing the favela scene. I love that track too. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. 皆さん、ジャズピーターさん。